A man straps $50,000 to each leg. His hands shake as he secures the bundles beneath his clothing. Airport security awaits just ahead. One wrong move, one suspicious glance, and decades of carefully constructed lies crumble into dust. But this isn't just any smuggler. This is James Harper, a Silicon Valley engineer who spent years selling America's most guarded nuclear secrets to the Soviet Union. The cash strapped to his body represents just a fraction of his betrayal. What drives a man to sell his country's deepest secrets? What price does a nation pay when its own citizens become ghosts in the machine? The story you're about to hear stretches across decades of deception, buried in the heart of America's technological revolution. It involves stolen documents hidden beneath muddy riverbanks, clandestine meetings in European hotel rooms, and a web of lies so complex that even the FBI struggled to untangle it. Harper's tale isn't just about one man's greed. It's about the dangerous intersection of innovation and espionage, where the very technologies designed to protect America became the tools of its betrayal. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe. You are not here by accident. James Durwood Harper Jr. entered the world in 1933, born into a middle-class family in Fresno, California. Nothing about his early years suggested the path he would eventually choose. He was the middle child, unremarkable in most ways, yet possessed of a peculiar talent that would shape his destiny. Electronics called to him like a siren song. While other children played with toys, Harper dismantled radios, studying their inner workings with an intensity that bordered on obsession. His brothers shared this technical aptitude, but Harper's gift ran deeper. The family moved frequently during the war years, finally settling in Fairfield, California, on the edges of what would soon become the world's most important technological hub. Silicon Valley was taking its first tentative breaths, silicon-based microchips emerging from laboratory experiments into revolutionary reality. Harper's high school years painted the portrait of an all-American boy. Football jerseys, muscle cars, the easy confidence that comes with youth and possibility. But beneath this conventional surface, something else stirred. A restlessness that conventional success could never satisfy. Military service beckoned after graduation, as it did for countless young men of his generation. The Korean conflict was winding down, so Harper never saw combat. Instead, he sharpened his electronic engineering skills in relative safety, building expertise that would later prove invaluable in ways no one could have predicted. His first real job came in Southern California's booming aerospace industry. Pentagon contracts flowed like water, funding the development of America's first intercontinental ballistic missiles. Harper found himself at the bleeding edge of military technology, working on weapons systems that could reshape the global balance of power. Yet even then, danger shadowed his steps. An experiment with solid rocket fuels went catastrophically wrong, nearly separating his head from his shoulders. Harper walked away from that job and that brush with mortality, but the experience left its mark. His next assignment took him to Alaska, to the remote installations where America watched for Soviet missiles screaming over the Arctic. The White Alice early warning communications network stretched across the frozen wasteland, a technological tripwire designed to give precious minutes of warning before annihilation arrived. Harper spent 18 months in northern Alaska, then moved to an even more isolated outpost called Tin City, just 55 miles from Siberia. From his windows, he could almost see the enemy. But isolation breeds strange thoughts, and Harper's entrepreneurial spirit chafed against military discipline. Silicon Valley beckoned like a promised land, offering fortune to those bold enough to seize it. By the mid-1960s, Harper had achieved what many considered the Silicon Valley dream. He married Colleen, started a family, and rode the technological wave that was transforming Northern California into the innovation capital of the world. His company, Harper Magnetics, seemed poised for success, but Harper possessed a fatal flaw that would poison every triumph. He never recognized when he had enough. Her name was Louise Howell. Green eyes, blonde hair, and a magnetic presence that Harper found irresistible despite his marriage vows. Their affair burned bright and destructive, fueled by alcohol and the intoxicating danger of forbidden passion. The relationship followed a predictable pattern of breakups and reconciliations, each cycle more damaging than the last. Louise eventually chose distance over drama, moving to San Francisco to escape Harper's gravitational pull. Her departure coincided with Harper's professional collapse. Harper Magnetics, once promising, spiraled into financial freefall. Bankruptcy followed, leaving Harper to sort through the wreckage of his first attempt at entrepreneurial glory. Picking up the pieces, he found employment at Fairchild Semiconductor, the company that helped birth the silicon microchip technology that gave the valley its legendary name. But working for others never satisfied Harper's ambitions. He struck out again, founding Harper Time and Electronics. His invention of the world's first digital stopwatch, the AccuSplit, should have secured his fortune. Instead, accusations of embezzlement forced him from his own company, another dream turning to ash in his hands. The mid-1970s found Harper at his lowest point. His marriage crumbled, alcohol became his constant companion, and gambling consumed whatever money remained. Multiple affairs provided temporary escape from the mounting pressures of his failing life. Desperation makes men vulnerable to dangerous friendships. Bill Hugel moved through Silicon Valley's corridors of power like a man born to influence. Co-founder of the Global Semiconductor Trade Association, unsuccessful congressional candidate, and believer in free trade, even with America's greatest enemy. On the surface, he represented everything Harper aspired to become. But Hugel harbored secrets that ran deeper than his public persona suggested. He worked quietly for Polish intelligence services, acquiring and selling prohibited technology to the Soviet bloc through carefully constructed networks. To those who knew how to look, the signs were there. Harper saw Hugel as salvation, a mentor who could guide him back to prosperity. Hugel, in turn, recognized Harper's potential usefulness. Their relationship began with small tasks, intimidation jobs that required Harper to travel and apply pressure where needed. Soon, shopping lists arrived, electronic components requested by the KGB, sourced through Harper's network of contacts and delivered for modest payments. A few thousand here, a few thousand there. Enough to keep Harper afloat, but nowhere near the windfall his increasingly desperate circumstances demanded. Harper played the role of enforcer and procurement specialist, but his eyes remained fixed on bigger prizes. The small-time deals with Hugel were apprenticeship, not destination. Then fate intervened in the form of a chance encounter at a Silicon Valley bar. 13 years had passed since Harper last saw Louise, but time had done little to diminish her effect on him. She walked into his usual watering hole like a ghost from a more promising past, triggering memories of passion and possibility. Louise had married and divorced in the intervening years, now going by her ex-husband's surname, Schuler. But more importantly, for Harper's purposes, she had found employment at Systems Control Incorporated, a Bay Area tech firm working on highly classified ballistic missile research. Her position as assistant to company president Robert Larsen provided access to information that would make Harper's previous smuggling operations look like amateur hour. She was also Larsen's mistress, a relationship that granted her additional privileges and trust. The pieces fell into place with almost supernatural precision. Louise knew the combination to the safe where Larsen kept the most sensitive research. Her birthday opened the vault to America's nuclear secrets. As the 1970s drew to a close, Harper recognized the opportunity he had been waiting for his entire adult life. Hugel's European connections could provide access to Soviet buyers hungry for American military intelligence. Harper contacted Hugel with a proposal that would dwarf their previous collaborations. Under the pretext of a family vacation, he arranged to meet Hugel in Geneva during July of 1979. The conversation that followed would set in motion one of the most damaging intelligence breaches in American history. The Swiss city provided the perfect backdrop for treason. Neutral ground where spies from every nation mingled with diplomats and businessmen, where secrets changed hands as easily as currency. Harper laid out his proposition with the confidence of a man who held winning cards. He could access highly classified materials relating to the Minuteman intercontinental ballistic missile program. Technical specifications, testing data, operational manuals, the complete blueprint for America's nuclear deterrent. The Minuteman represented a revolutionary leap in military technology. The first solid-fuel ICBM deployed by the United States, it could strike targets anywhere on Earth within hours of launch. Combined with nuclear warheads, these missiles formed the backbone of America's land-based nuclear arsenal. The technical intelligence Harper offered could potentially tip the Cold War balance decisively in favor of the Soviet Union. No wonder his eyes gleamed with dollar signs as he outlined the opportunity. Hugel promised to relay the proposal to his contacts in Warsaw to gauge Soviet interest in what Harper was selling. The response came within days, carried through encrypted channels that spanned continents. The KGB was very interested indeed. The flight to Warsaw felt like crossing into another world. Harper moved through customs with the false confidence of a man who had rehearsed his cover story until it felt like truth. Zdzisław Przychodniak waited for him, officially a minister in Poland's machine tool industry, actually an agent for Polish intelligence services that functioned as extended arms of the KGB. The distinction mattered little in practical terms. Polish intelligence was Soviet intelligence by another name. Harper's hotel accommodations spoke to the importance his hosts placed on the meeting. Luxury suites, fine dining, treatment befitting a valuable asset rather than a mere contact. The initial negotiation revealed both the potential and the perils of Harper's position. He brought sample documents stolen from Larsen's safe, along with detailed lists of additional materials he could supply. Przychodniak was impressed but cautious. The agreed price was $155,000, to be split equally between Hugel, Harper, and Louise. But payment would come only after the Soviets could verify the intelligence value of Harper's offerings. Harper's cunning showed in his negotiation tactics. He bulked up his document packages with unclassified materials to justify higher prices, and he carefully protected Louise's identity to prevent the Soviets from approaching her directly. But the Soviets had their own conditions. Full payment would come only at the next meeting, after analysis confirmed the value of Harper's intelligence. The price Harper demanded, nearly $1 million, was ambitious beyond reason. Undeterred, Harper returned to California with instructions to gather as much classified material as possible. Harper and Louise developed a routine that balanced audacity with caution. They accessed Larsen's office after hours when the building stood empty and security was minimal. Louise's key and her knowledge of alarm codes provided entry to spaces that should have been impregnable. The safe opened with the simple turn of a dial. Louise's birthday, a personal detail that Larson had chosen for convenience without considering the security implications. Inside lay folders containing some of America's most guarded nuclear secrets. Document by document, they harvested intelligence like farmers gathering a deadly crop. Technical specifications, test results, operational procedures, maintenance manuals, the complete roadmap to American ballistic missile technology. They worked through the night at Louise's apartment, photocopying page after page under the harsh glare of office equipment. Each document represented another nail in America's coffin, another advantage handed to its greatest enemy. Louise would return the original documents early each morning, replacing them in the safe before their absence could be noticed. The system worked with mechanical precision, night after night. As their criminal partnership deepened, Harper and Louise rekindled their romantic relationship. They were living together again, bound by shared danger and mutual dependence. Love and treason intertwined in ways that neither could have anticipated. By autumn of 1979, they had stolen everything of value from Larson's safe. It was time to return to Europe and complete the transaction that would make them all wealthy. Vienna held special significance in the espionage world. The former imperial capital had become the unofficial spy capital of Europe, a place where intelligence officers from every major power maintained operations under diplomatic cover. Harper checked into the Intercontinental Hotel in October of 1979, playing the role of a successful American businessman on a European vacation. Louise joined him after completing a legitimate conference elsewhere in Europe, providing perfect cover for their presence in the city. The meeting with Hugal and Przychodniak took place in a hotel room that could have been anywhere in the world. Anonymous furniture, neutral colors, the kind of space designed to be forgotten. Harper's revelation of the documents he had brought generated immediate interest, but his next move demonstrated either supreme confidence or dangerous naivety. He told Przychodniak that Louise would collect their payment and deliver the latest batch of photocopied secrets. This decision brought his source dangerously close to Soviet handlers, violating every principle of operational security that should have guided such an arrangement. When Louise arrived at the designated meeting point, Przychodniak refused to pay. He claimed the documents were worthless, dismissing intelligence that had cost enormous effort to obtain as no more valuable than cold soup. Louise returned empty-handed to Harper's hotel room, followed shortly by an angry Przychodniak. The confrontation that followed revealed the true nature of the relationship between all parties. Hugal's intervention escalated the situation further. His shouting match with Przychodniak in the hotel bar attracted exactly the kind of attention that professional spies spend their careers avoiding. Harper recognized the danger and decided to retreat to American soil, but the damage was done. Trust had been broken, relationships strained, and operational security compromised. Back in California, Harper faced a crisis that threatened to destroy everything he had worked toward. Przychodniak's refusal to pay appeared to be a negotiating tactic designed to drive down prices, but Harper had revealed his source and compromised his position. His relationship with Hugal began deteriorating as mutual suspicions poisoned their partnership. Harper found himself broke, exposed, and increasingly desperate for a resolution that would salvage both his finances and his security. The solution he devised demonstrated both his ingenuity and his willingness to take extraordinary risks. Harper and Louise continued copying documents from Larson's safe, eventually accumulating materials worth approximately $100,000 on the intelligence black market. But holding such dangerous materials while negotiating with unreliable partners was asking for trouble. Harper needed a secure hiding place where the documents could remain safe until a deal could be struck. He turned to Jack Stower, a friend who owned a sailboat and possessed fewer scruples than most people would consider healthy. Stower agreed to help without asking uncomfortable questions about what they were hiding. The two men sailed into the Sacramento River Delta under cover of darkness, searching for a location remote enough to serve their purposes. They found a small island where Harper could bury the documents 3 feet deep in mud and sand. Cardboard boxes became makeshift coffins for America's nuclear secrets, hidden beneath the California soil while Harper attempted to salvage his relationship with Soviet intelligence. With the documents safely cached, Harper needed a way to contact Prikhodniak without alerting Hugel to his independent initiative. He recruited another former girlfriend, Uta Bushley, who lived in Switzerland and could serve as an intermediary. The message she carried was simple. Harper wanted to meet with Prikhodniak directly, without Hugel's involvement. Harper's return to Warsaw in May of 1980 painted a dramatically different picture from his previous visit. Prikhodniak welcomed him with warmth that bordered on enthusiasm, producing a thick stack of $100 bills representing the $115,000 owed from their previous transaction. The transformation suggested that Soviet analysis had confirmed the value of Harper's intelligence, validating his assessment of what he was selling. But Harper remained cautious, taking only $10,000 to avoid potential complications with Hugel. Despite clear Soviet interest, the $1 million price Harper had originally demanded remained out of reach. The final offer was $100,000, a sum that Harper found acceptable given his desperate circumstances. Racing back to California, Harper prepared to retrieve his buried treasure with Stower's assistance. But the Sacramento River had other plans for their carefully hidden cache. Flooding had transformed the landscape, submerging the island where Harper had buried the documents. When the waters receded, they found waterlogged cardboard boxes containing what appeared to be ruined intelligence. Harper's panic was understandable. His payday seemed to have dissolved into river mud, leaving him with nothing to show for months of dangerous work. But patience and careful drying revealed that the documents were still legible despite their ordeal. The intelligence remained valuable. The deal could proceed, and Harper's fortune was still within reach. It was time to return to Warsaw with his soggy but salvageable payload. June of 1980 found Harper once again crossing into Eastern Europe, this time carrying suitcases filled with stolen American missile secrets. The weight of the documents was nothing compared to the weight of what they represented. The meeting location reflected the importance of the transaction. A chalet on the outskirts of Warsaw provided privacy and security for what would be one of the largest intelligence transfers of the Cold War. 20 KGB agents had flown in specifically to analyze Harper's delivery. 2,100 pages of classified documents, each one representing another piece of America's nuclear puzzle handed to its greatest enemy. The analysis took 24 hours, during which Harper waited with the nervous energy of a man whose entire future hung in the balance. When the verdict came, it was everything he had hoped for. The envelope of $100 bills felt substantial in his hands, representing validation of both his intelligence and his courage. But getting the money home presented its own challenges. Harper's European vacation with Uta Bushley provided cover for moving the funds, though his casino gambling and attempts to deposit cash into French banks created unnecessary complications. When legitimate banking channels failed, Harper resorted to the time-tested smuggler's technique of strapping cash to his body. $50,000 on each leg, hidden beneath his clothing as he passed through airport security. Luck favored him that day, and he made it through multiple checkpoints without inspection. Back in California, he shared $20,000 with Stower for his assistance and kept the remainder for himself and Louise. Their trip to Reno for a quick marriage ceremony raised questions about motivation. Was this love conquering all, or a practical decision to gain spousal privilege protections? Harper's subsequent trips to Poland followed the same pattern of document delivery and cash payment, but the Soviets were growing concerned about operational security. Moving large quantities of classified materials through Polish customs created unnecessary risks for all parties involved. The solution was to relocate future meetings to Mexico, where Harper could travel more freely and surveillance was less intensive. His new handler, known only as Jacques, would manage the relationship from Mexico City. Their first meeting in December of 1980 went smoothly, establishing procedures that would govern future transactions. But Harper's second visit to Mexico City carried materials that exceeded anything he had previously provided in terms of intelligence value. Soviet satisfaction with these new documents was evident in their prompt payment and eagerness for additional materials. But Harper was growing nervous about the long-distance travel required for Mexican meetings. His concerns led to a compromise. Future meetings would take place in Matamoros, much closer to the American border and more convenient for Harper's travel schedule. But convenience came with its own costs. Harper's behavior was becoming increasingly erratic as the stress of his double life took its toll. He would sometimes arrive at meetings without documents, demanding payment for previous deliveries or requesting advance payment for future intelligence. Soviet patience began wearing thin as Harper's reliability deteriorated. The professional relationship that had generated substantial profits for all parties was showing signs of strain. Harper's meeting with Przychodniak in Warsaw during November of 1981 revealed the extent to which their relationship had deteriorated. The atmosphere was tense, the trust that had characterized earlier interactions notably absent. They managed to reach agreement on one final delivery: 29 specific documents from the KGB's shopping list to be handed over during a meeting with Jacques in Mexico during early 1982. But the meeting never took place. A coded postcard from Jacques, received weeks before the scheduled rendezvous, contained the cancellation message that Harper had hoped never to see. His money tap was running dry after earning at least $250,000 from his espionage activities. But Harper was not ready to accept the end of his lucrative career as a Soviet asset. The plan he conceived next demonstrated both his audacity and his fundamental misunderstanding of how intelligence services operate. Harper decided to approach the FBI with an offer to become a double agent, believing he could trade his knowledge for immunity and a substantial paycheck. Using the pseudonym J, Harper contacted defense attorney Bill Doty, who had represented other American turncoats in high-profile cases. Harper's proposition was simple: immunity from prosecution and financial compensation in exchange for working against the Soviet Union. The entire scheme was absurd from the start, but the FBI's counterintelligence officers saw an opportunity to finally identify the Silicon Valley spy they had been hunting. What Harper didn't know was that the CIA had already been alerted to his activities by a Polish intelligence mole codenamed Caribou, who had provided details about an American source supplying extremely valuable nuclear intelligence. Harper's approach to the FBI came at exactly the wrong moment for him, and exactly the right moment for American counterintelligence. The year 1983 marked a particularly dangerous period in Cold War tensions. Soviet leadership was convinced that America was preparing a nuclear first strike, fears heightened by NATO military exercises that simulated exactly such scenarios. In this environment, capturing the spy who had sold America's ballistic missile secrets became a priority mission for the FBI and CIA. Harper's voluntary contact with law enforcement provided the breakthrough they needed. Through his attorney, Harper began revealing details of his espionage activities while using code names to protect his associates. But when he identified Bill Hugel by name, the FBI recognized a major development in their investigation. Hugel had been under investigation for years, his phone tapped and his activities monitored. But he was too experienced and careful to discuss illegal activities over monitored communications channels. The break in the case came through an accidental encounter. Harper bumped into an engineering colleague during a morning jog, engaged in casual conversation, and later mentioned the man's name to his attorney. The FBI interviewed the engineer, who mentioned Harper's name in passing. Investigators were puzzled because Harper had no security clearance and no apparent access to ballistic missile technology. The puzzle's solution revealed the true scope of Harper's operation. Louise Schuler's access to classified materials had been the key to everything, making Harper a conduit rather than a source. Phone taps and surveillance followed, but Harper's activities appeared mundane on the surface. The FBI needed more evidence to justify an arrest. Louise Schuler's declining health added urgency to the FBI's investigation. Years of heavy drinking had destroyed her liver, and she was clearly dying. If she passed away before Harper could be arrested, a crucial witness would be lost forever. The FBI observed Harper's behavior during what they assumed was Louise's final illness, noting his visits to other girlfriends while maintaining the pretense of devoted partnership. His moral character was becoming clear to investigators. Louise's passing on June 22, 1983, at age 39, removed Harper's primary accomplice and source of classified intelligence. But it also freed him to pursue other relationships without maintaining the fiction of exclusive devotion. Harper's quick remarriage to a Nevada girlfriend provided the FBI with additional surveillance opportunities, but months of monitoring failed to produce evidence of ongoing espionage activities. Recorded conversations revealed Harper's boasting about hidden money in the Cayman Islands, his claims of financial independence, and his apparent indifference to tax obligations. But none of this constituted proof of treason. The surveillance program was reaching its limits without generating actionable evidence. Harper had successfully compartmentalized his activities, keeping his espionage career separate from his daily routine. John Gibbons of the U.S. Attorney's Office in San Francisco received the call that would change everything. The Department of Justice had been contacted by Harper's attorney with an offer of cooperation in exchange for immunity and compensation. After years of selling America's most damaging secrets to the Soviet Union, Harper believed his adopted country would be interested in hiring him as a double agent. The audacity of the proposition was matched only by its fundamental stupidity. But Harper's approach had achieved something he never intended. By voluntarily contacting law enforcement, he had provided them with enough information to justify arrest and prosecution. The FBI wanted to move immediately, but Gibbons insisted on building a stronger case before proceeding. The challenge was gathering sufficient evidence to ensure conviction at trial. The CIA's Polish asset Caribou offered the strongest testimony, but using him in open court would expose a valuable intelligence source and potentially cost him his life. After defecting to the United States, Caribou had been sentenced to capital punishment in absentia by Polish authorities. Protecting intelligence sources while securing criminal convictions requires delicate balancing, and the CIA was reluctant to sacrifice Caribou for Harper's prosecution. The decision was made to arrest Harper and attempt to secure a confession rather than rely on Caribou's testimony. It was a calculated risk that would determine whether justice could be served. October 15, 1983, began like any other day for Harper. Coffee, newspaper, the comfortable routine of a man who believed himself beyond the reach of consequences. The illusion shattered when FBI agents burst through his apartment door, surrounding him with the overwhelming force of federal law enforcement. Harper's spy games had finally come to an end. But arrest was only the beginning of Harper's legal ordeal. Prosecutors faced significant challenges in proving his guilt beyond reasonable doubt. Without Caribou's testimony and without direct evidence from their surveillance operation, they needed Harper to confess. Judge Samuel Conti had a reputation for harsh sentencing that worked in the prosecution's favor. Though the Supreme Court had recently ruled that convicted spies could not receive capital punishment, Conti could still impose life imprisonment without parole. The choice presented to Harper was stark: confess and hope for judicial mercy, or face trial with the probability of maximum sentencing if convicted. Harper's decision came quickly. Faced with the prospect of spending his remaining years in federal prison, he chose to cooperate fully with authorities. His confession detailed not only his own activities, but also implicated Louise Schuler, Bill Hugel, and Jack Stower in the espionage conspiracy that had compromised American nuclear secrets. Harper's sentencing on May 19, 1984, brought his espionage career to its final conclusion. Life imprisonment reflected both the severity of his crimes and the damage he had caused to American national security. But justice proved selective in its application. Jack Stower never faced prosecution, choosing instead to sail south toward Mexico in his boat. He never reached his destination, presumably lost at sea during the voyage that was meant to provide escape from American law enforcement. Bill Hugel presented a more complex challenge for prosecutors. Despite thorough searches of his property and detailed analysis of his finances, investigators could not find sufficient evidence to support criminal charges. Hugel's caution and experience had protected him from the kind of careless mistakes that had doomed Harper. At trial, prosecutors would have faced the challenge of proving guilt based primarily on the testimony of a convicted spy against one of Silicon Valley's most prominent business figures. Rather than risk prosecution, Hugel chose exile, settling in Switzerland, where he lived until his passing in 2003 at age 76. Harper served 30 years in federal prison before receiving parole in 2016. He spent his remaining years in Northwest Arkansas, far from his native California and estranged from family members who had been damaged by his choices. The irony of Harper's final chapter was profound. Despite betraying his country for Soviet gold, his military service earned him the right to burial in a veterans' cemetery when he passed away in August of 2022 at age 89. James Harper's story illuminates the complex intersection of technology, loyalty, and greed that defined the Cold War era. His betrayal occurred at the heart of American innovation, in the very place where the nation's technological superiority was being forged. The intelligence he sold to the Soviet Union included technical specifications for ballistic missile systems that remained central to American nuclear deterrence decades after his arrest. The long-term consequences of his espionage continue to influence global strategic balance in ways that may never be fully understood. But perhaps the most troubling aspect of Harper's case is how easily it could have been prevented. Better security protocols, more careful background investigations, and improved counterintelligence awareness might have stopped him before he could cause irreparable damage. His story serves as a reminder that America's greatest vulnerabilities often come not from external enemies, but from internal betrayal. The price of freedom includes eternal vigilance against those who would sell that freedom for personal gain. In the shadows of Silicon Valley, where innovation continues to reshape the world, Harper's legacy lingers as a cautionary tale about the dangers that lurk within the very institutions designed to protect American interests. The question that haunts his story is not whether such betrayals will happen again, but whether we will be prepared to recognize and stop them before they can inflict lasting damage on the nation Harper chose to betray.